So, welcome to the Arkansas Women in Agriculture Virtual Summer Conference. My name is Danette Spann, and I'm the president of the Women in Ag.
And I am Yvette Browning, First Vice President for Arkansas Women in Agriculture.
We'd like to welcome you to the 2020 Arkansas Women in Agriculture Virtual Conference. With our regular conference canceled back in March of this year due to the COVID, we wanted to offer something to our members through a virtual conference that still introduced you to several topics that are top of mind, things that we really need to know about and talk about as women in ag. But we also wanted to help you connect with other members within our membership. We have some great speakers today, and we want you guys to enjoy those. Most of you who were registered for the conference back in March should have received your awesome t-shirts, just like what I've got on today, Grow Your Power shirts. You should have received those in the mail within the last week or so. So be watching for that if you haven't. And then we just want you to enjoy today's conference. But Yvette has a few housekeeping items that she needs to cover before we get started.
Right. So as with any meeting, there's always housekeeping items. So first we'll start with bathrooms. The bathrooms are down the hall.
Oh, wait. Not down the hall. They can use their own restroom.
That's right. Okay. For breaks, if you notice, we have breaks scheduled in for the meeting today.
Well, you can do a break, but you're kind of on a break already, especially if you're watching this online. You're sitting in your chair, relaxing. And if you have to go get a snack, you can go do that on your own time.
That's true. Cell phones. Please silence your cell phones or put them in a mode that won't disturb others.
And that's true because we don't want you to be interrupted during our conference.
If you can't hear the speaker, please raise your hand and let us know that you need to hear the speaker in the back.
Or turn your volume up and you should be good.
I think that'll work best. Okay, so if you can't find your meeting room, pen and pad will not be provided, but they're available upon request.
We can't help you with that, though. You're going to have to put on pen and paper.
I guess feel free to take notes as you wish. You don't have to worry about going to meeting rooms because
you're already in one.
Yes, everything is going to be right here.
Absolutely.
So you don't have to move or anything. Everything's right here. So if you have comments or questions, please wait for the microphone.
Yes, we are actually, and this is going to be on Facebook Live. So you will be able to ask questions as you go on this during our virtual conference. And so we will have people standing by. Either the speakers themselves will be able to answer you, or we'll have other people within the Women in Ag who can answer your question or get you your contact information and get you the answer at a later time.
Right. So this totally eliminates being nervous about raising your hand and speaking in front of others. All you have to do is just start typing.
That's right.
Type your question in and we'll be monitoring, and so will our speakers, to answer your questions.
Absolutely.
That's about all I had for housekeeping items.
I did want to mention our sponsors real quick. We have some awesome sponsors for this year's conference and for this virtual conference. We have Farm Credit, Simmons Bank, Greenway, Arkansas Cattlemen's Association, Arkansas Beef Council, Cowboys for Tyler, Arkansas Farm Bureau, Murchison Planters Bank, and Swing Away J Ministries. So we have some excellent sponsorships. So please, if you're ever out and about, please thank these sponsors for everything they do for Arkansas Women in Ag.
Yeah, we really do appreciate them.
All right. Well, thank you guys for joining us on today's virtual conference. And
this is our very first virtual conference. So you all are making history with the Women in Agriculture right here with us right now.
Absolutely. And now we'll get started.
Good afternoon. My name is Latrice Gill, and I serve as the Director of Outreach for USDA's Farm Service Agency. This is the Coronavirus Food Assistance Program webinar on newly eligible commodities and program adjustments. Today we'll have two other presenters joining us today. Sonia Jimenez, the AMS Deputy Director for Specialty Crops, and Janae Prescott, FSA National Farm Program Specialist. But first, a few housekeeping tips. Please know that this webinar is being recorded and will be posted and made available online following a voice transcription. If you're unable to hear us, there is a phone bridge available that is currently showing on your screen. Questions, as applicable, will be answered and added to the CFAP Frequently Asked Questions page on farmers.gov/CFAP/FAQ. Last month, as you know, we held a series of producer and stakeholder webinars. Well, today we're going to discuss what's new about CFAP, CFAP for specialty crop producers, and tips for a successful application submission. But first, let's start with the basics. The COVID pandemic, as you know, has affected agricultural operations in many ways. This program was developed to address two major challenges from the virus, and that's price declines and supply chain disruption. This pandemic caused a decline in the demand of some commodities and affected the market supply chain. A lot of our producers, we've heard, have been experiencing all kinds of challenges of getting their products to market. Some trying to get it there before milk spoiled. Some had to dump milk from their contracts getting canceled. And then others may have been affected by schools or restaurants closing. This program provides relief through direct payments, and we know it won't make all producers whole, but it will provide some relief to farmers and ranchers. To ensure that funds serve as many as possible, producers whose applications are approved will receive 80% of their maximum total payment upon approval of the application. The remaining portion of the payment, which is not to exceed the payment limit, will be paid at a later date as funds remain available and are announced at a later date. This application period is open through August 28th, and there is no fee to apply. Anyone is able to apply for this program. Please note that this program is not a loan. It does not have to be repaid unless there is some type of error or fraud that occurs, but it's designed to offset payment losses and financial impacts that were caused by this pandemic. There are no stipulations to how it should be spent. Most of the producers applying have incurred significant cost to get a product ready for market and then weren't able to sell it, and then others may have experienced a price decline. These payments are not offsettable They will not be used to satisfy any USDA debts or Treasury payments, so they are not eligible for offset. To give you a little bit more about payment limitations and eligibility, you do not have to be a current producer with USDA. You don't have to be a customer with us already. And we have something that's called payment limitations, which is the limit that a producer may receive on a USDA program. That is $250,000 per person. But unlike other FSA programs, there's a special payment limitation that applies for corporations, limited liability companies, and limited partnerships, corporate entities. These entities can receive up to $750,000 based on the number of shareholders, not to exceed 3, who are contributing at least 400 hours of active person management or personal active labor. We encourage producers to take a look at the specialty crops and the different categories. All of this information can be accessed online on our website. That is www.farmers.gov/CFAP. Now we're going to talk a little bit about the different categories for specialty crops. The first category falls under the sales loss, the price decline. And what that means is that crops meet the 5% or greater decline in price, and these are commodities that were sold between January 15th and April 15th. So what actually goes on the application, producers will certify that their volume of production in pounds that was sold between these dates for each, which is January 15th to April 15th, for each eligible crop, only the production that's subject to price risk can be reported, and only the producer's portion of the ownership can be reported. So let me repeat that. For sales loss, what goes on the application is just that you will certify in pounds the volume of production that was sold between January 15th and April 15th for each eligible crop. Only production subject to price risk or sales loss can be reported, and only the producer's portion of the ownership interest can be reported. So you can't put your partner's interest, it only has to be your individual producer interest. The second category covers crops that were delivered and spoiled or was unpaid. So what goes on the application there, producers would certify, again, total volume of production in pounds that is shipped but not sold between January 15th and April 15th for each of your eligible crops. So that's everything that was shipped but not sold, which would be unpaid, between those dates. And again, only the producer's portion of ownership can be reported. Now, the last category is not delivered. What that means is any commodity that was left on the farm, a shipment that didn't leave the farm at all, or any acres that may not have been harvested, these would fall into category 3 as a not delivered commodity. It would also include crops that were donated. So what goes on the application? Producers will certify the total number of acres that were left in the field or harvested but not shipped between January 15th and April 15th for each eligible crop. Again, only the producer's portion of ownership can be reported. Now you can find these commodities and their categories as they would be eligible all online, again on that farmers.gov website. Now for payments, how do the producers determine what they're eligible for and what they should be in? The best way would be for you to go on the website and review our specialty crop webinar. We had a specialty crop webinar last month. If you would go to those recordings, and you can take a deeper dive into the different categories for specialty crops. For payments, first it's important to know that if there were any crops in inventory available to be sold on April 16th and have a future value, then they are not eligible. Now, some examples for that would be apples, potatoes, onions, nuts, viable products beyond April 15th because they can be stored and they don't spoil easily, so they would not be eligible. Commodities can fall into one or more categories. It's not restricted to just one. Crops falling into more than one category or multiple commodities in one application, you would need to do, one application. You would do one application even if it falls into more than one category. You will have one payment and one application. So it's not separated just because you had different commodities or that they fall into different categories. It will be one application. Producers will be paid out of the experience loss due to the prices that declined and they were unpaid for or that went unharvested due to market conditions between January 15th and April 15th. When producers are paid, they will be paid by their individual share. So when applying for the program, remember that it should reflect only your portion of the crop that you had specifically. To clarify, it is okay to have a commodity that goes across all three categories. For ownership, the payment will be reflective of the share in which the producer is at stake or within interest. If a producer is responsible for 50% of a share of an acreage or a crop, for example, then their application would be only for 50% of the cost and what was lost as a result of the associated payment. We're going to talk a little bit more about that later, but we want to point out to you to let you know that crops that are in inventory available to be sold on April 16th or later and have a future value, again, are not eligible. I just want to make sure that that's clear because these are crops that could be stored and have a future value. Now, as you know, we had an open comment period, a notice of funding availability where we were accepting feedback and information and data on commodities that were not included in the announcement. Joining us now from AMS is Sonia Jimenez. And Sonia, what I'd like for you to do is to tell us now about some of the new commodities that are available. And before you do that, can you just kind of clarify why we even had a NOFA process?
Yes, thank you, Latrice. When we first announced this program, we had a lot of information available for specialty crops, and we chose to pick the top commodities to expedite the process. So the first notice had only about 50 or so specialty crops commodities. And because we knew that there's over 300 specialty crops, we asked industry to provide us information about other commodities that we should include. And that's why we published the NOFA, trying to gather more information about what other commodities we should include, and also asking industry to provide us information about pricing for these commodities during January and April of this year. The result was that we received 1,740 comments, and the majority of those were related to specialty crops. So what we did was to gather those comments, and we started going through the comments What you're seeing right now is the result of the first review of the first group of comments. We were able to identify these, I believe there are like 42 commodities on that list that are eligible to participate in this program. We did not want to wait until the last minute to include everything that we have. We're still going through comments. There are many more commodities that we still are looking at, but we wanted to publish those that we had already made decisions on. And that is why you see this NOFA that was published in June with these additional commodities. That does not mean that this is all-inclusive. As I said, we're still going through comments, and we will add additional commodities to this list in a subsequent NOFA.
That's good information to know. Now, where could they find this listing of new commodities that's been added?
They can go to the website, www.farmers.gov CFAP/CFAP. All the information is there with all the different commodities that have been added. The payment rates are also in there. And so you can see not only the commodities that were added and the old commodities that were originally included, but all the different payment rates for each commodity.
Wonderful. That's good news to know. And just to clarify, you did say that there would be another announcement coming soon on other eligible commodities?
Correct. We are still going through comments, and once we are done with all the comments, we will come out with another announcement with additional commodities.
Okay. But the comment period has ended, correct? No one can submit new information. Right. Okay.
Yes, the comment period ended. We received, like I say, 1,740 comments, and because of so many comments, we are still going through some of them, and we have a list of commodities that we are still evaluating. We do a very thorough evaluation of every comment, whether information was submitted during the comment in terms of pricing and volume, or whether we can find information on other commodities in our market news data. So if we can substantiate a commodity's loss, then we recommend that commodity for payment. So we will finish that process very soon.
Okay. Well, thank you. I appreciate you clarifying that for us. Janae Prescott with FSA. I'd love for you to explain a little bit about sales loss and the different categories.
Yeah, absolutely. Good morning, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you, Latrice, for having me here today. As Latrice mentioned earlier, the sales loss category or price decline is based on the 5% or greater national price loss between mid-January and mid-April. So as Sonia said, when they were reviewing the NOFA and based on a review of market news reports, there were some commodities that were already eligible for buckets 2 and 3 or categories 2 and 3 that now, after review, are eligible for the sales loss category. So if you look on the screen, there's 7 commodities listed. Those commodities were commodities that were eligible under categories 2 and 3 that are now also eligible under category 1, the price decline sales loss category. In addition to having some of the commodities that were already existing added to category 1, we have a few crops that are no longer eligible for category 1 sales loss. And once again, based upon the market news reports, the 2 commodities listed on your screen now are no longer eligible for category 1. However, they are still eligible for categories 2 and 3. We also had some adjustments to payment rates. So USDA is adjusting payment rates for the following commodities on your screen. Those are going to be under different categories within the buckets, but those are commodities that were already existing and we're making adjustments to the payment rate. Some additional information on those adjustments of rates. So based on those commodities that we just listed, for and receive those payments for those commodities, you will be able to keep your payment. So even though the payment has been decreased, if you already received a payment for that commodity, you will be able to retain that payment. If an additional payment is later approved for CFAP, the new payment rates and sales loss categories eligible will apply. Okay, if you had a commodity that had an increase in payment rate, so say you had already applied for a commodity where the rate now has increased. When software updated to update our new rates, if you received a payment, that new payment of the higher rates will automatically be generated, and a new payment would be issued for the increase in the payment rate. Commodities now qualify for a price decline sales loss category payment. So if you previously applied and received a CFAP payment, and now an eligible commodity is under the category 1 sales loss, you can amend your application to include those commodities, and you can do that by contacting your local FSA office to amend your application.
Thank you, Janae. Don't go too far. I'm going to bring you back in a minute to talk about some examples. But right now I want to just kind of go through the application process of applying for these newly eligible commodities. So let's say this is your first time applying. You didn't apply previously when the announcement first came out. What do I need to do? Apply. Basically, that's the first thing you need to do, is to go ahead and apply for the new commodities. You have until August 28th. All of the information that you need is available online. You're able to utilize the application generator. It's a calculator/generator where you will enter all of your commodities into, and it will formulate that payment for you, and it turns into the application that you will submit to the office. So the first thing you need to do is to go ahead and apply. Some of your options that you have available, we do offer all of this available online. If you'd like to submit everything electronically instead of going into the offices, you're able to use your e-authentication account to apply online. And there is information online to tell you about how to obtain that authentication if you don't already have it. But having that allows you to utilize some of the software we have to submit electronically to the office. You also have the opportunity to schedule a phone appointment if you prefer to discuss instead of going online. If you prefer to discuss with the office, you're able to make an appointment. We have a call care center that we'll talk about later that you can call and ask questions to. But the most important thing for you to do now is to take a look at the website and look at all of those resources on how to apply. Well, Latrice, what if I've already applied? How can I change my application? How do I amend it? Got a couple of different options here. It all depends. If you submitted your application online by utilizing that e-authentication account that I mentioned, you are able to also go in online and make edits to that application. However, if you submit it in person or through mail, you do need to work with the county office and let them know that you'd like to make a change. Even if you submit it electronically, you want to go in and make some amendments electronically, you still want to reach out to the office and let them know that you're planning to make some changes to that application. So here you have 4 different options. You can send in those updates by submitting to the local office. You can schedule a phone appointment to discuss it over the phone, and they can email or send you the form electronically to revise. Again, online if you have that e-authentication ID, or you can schedule an in-person appointment. As you know, some of our offices have started opening up, and by appointments only, you are able to schedule an appointment to go and speak to someone at the office. So that's just a quick, what do you do if you've never applied before? And again, we'll talk through more specifics later. And then if you've already applied and you want to amend now that we have these newly eligible commodities. But right now, I think what will be most important, if you learned a little bit about how to actually do this. And I'm one of those people that I need some examples. Give me some examples. Give me, an example of how this looks. What if? Give me different scenarios. So Janae, if you don't mind, please walk us through some different examples as far as these applications are concerned.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so the first example we have here, we have Farmer Alex that grows apples for sales at a local farmer's market. He has 100% ownership in 1,000 pounds of apples that were harvested and sold between the January 15th and April 15th, 2020. The farmers markets where Farmer Alex sells apples closed due to the pandemic. This left Farmer Alex with an acre of apples in production that was unable to be marketed before they spoiled because the farmer markets were no longer a viable outlet. The apples were harvested and some were donated to food banks, but the majority were composted on the farm. So originally, Farmer Alex submitted a CFAP application on June 15, 2020, and certified to the 1 acre as the acres with production not shipped or sold on the application. And you see in the example there where we have in item 34, we have the 1 acre. And then he was not eligible for compensation on the 1,000 pounds of apples sold, as that was not an eligible category on June 15th when Farmer Alex first applied. Farmer Alex then learns of Category 1 now being eligible for apples as of July 10th. So now Farmer Alex called his local FSA office and requests to modify his original application to include the 1,000 pounds of apples sold between January 15th and April 15th. And he's going to do that on item 32, as you can see in the example there. The FSA office makes that edit to show the 1,000 pounds in box 32, and it's also going to show the original 1 acre in box 34 as he had on his previous application. Farmer Alex will sign the new application and get it returned to the FSA office. Upon receiving and approving his application, Farmer Alex will be issued the additional payment for the 1,000 pounds of apples that he sold between January 15th and April 15th. On to example 2, we have Farmer Rosario had 100 pounds of fresh russet potatoes delivered to a local restaurant, normally delivered on the 1st and 15th of each month, from January 1st of 2020 to April 15th of 2020. The restaurant paid for the shipment received during February 2020, but beginning with the March 2020 shipments, the restaurant has limited customers, and the potatoes were donated, and Farmer Rosario was not paid. On June 15th, Farmer Rosario applied for CFAP and certified to the 400 pounds as the volume of production shipped but not sold and unpaid on a CFAP form. So that is item number 33. You can see the 400 pounds that was shipped and unpaid for. And then want to make sure that we point out that the potatoes sold in February were not previously eligible for that. So now, Farmer Rosario learns that as of July 10th, potatoes have been separated into 4 types with different payment rates for each type. Originally, when he applied, it was all potatoes in one category, but now there's a new category, fresh russet potatoes. that now qualify under the price decline sales lost payment category in item 32. So Farmer Rosario wants to amend his application through the online portal. He calls his FSA office and requests that they make his application editable again. So basically that office, he applied online originally. They need to go in and remove the approval date so he can now edit the application online. The 400 pounds of potatoes that were originally recorded as regular potatoes are now going to be under potatoes russet for fresh. So that's 400 pounds that are now going to be under the fresh russet potatoes. And then in item 33, he's going to still have the 400 pounds that were originally on the application.
Now that's really good.
Oh, go ahead.
I'm sorry. I'm just want to make sure I'm understanding it because this is really good to know. So previously, all of those potato types were lumped into one rate, right?
That is correct. They were all under just one potato category with one rate.
Okay.
And now those potatoes are under the 4 different categories. And so by adjusting the application and putting the potatoes under the russets for fresh, as what he was marketing them for, he is now has an increase in payment. So upon this application being approved, he will be issued a payment for the increase in the payment rate on the original 400 pounds claimed. And in addition, now the 200 pounds that he sold originally are eligible as well. So he will get the additional amount for the 200 pounds that he is now claiming in item 32.
Okay, that's good information, or good clarification for me. Now, this, of course, was on a revised application. What about those who are applying for the first time or a new application?
Yeah, absolutely. For new application, here we have Francis Farmer, who is a vegetable operation and grows high tunnel tomatoes for sale at restaurants and farmer markets. Francis Farmer has 100% ownership and 2,000 pounds of tomatoes that were sold between January 15th and April 15th. So Farmer Francis, if they would want to come in and certify to the 2,000 pounds of the volume production sold between January 15th and April 15th. And that is going to be done in item 32, on the application. And now say if, this was pointed out earlier, they get to claim, their shares of those tomatoes. So say Farmer Francis only had 50% in that commodity, then they would only get to claim 1,000 pounds. So just with some clarification when applying for these new applications, that once again, they only get to claim the share of their ownership in those commodities. So of her restaurant sales, Francis Farmer had 50 pounds of tomatoes delivered to one local restaurant on the 1st and 15th each month from January 15th through April 15th. The restaurant paid for the shipment received during January and February 2020. But starting in March of 2020 shipments, the restaurant had limited customers, the tomatoes spoiled, and Francis Farmer was not paid. Francis Farmer will certify to 200 pounds as the volume of production shipped but not sold on the CFAP form, and that's item 33 on the AD 3114. Okay, and then in addition, the restaurants that Francis Farmer sold her tomatoes to all closed in March 2020, leaving her with an additional 1/8 of an acre of tomatoes that weren't able to be marketed to any other buyer before they spoiled. The tomatoes remain unharvested on the farm. Francis Farmer will certify to 1/8 of an acre as acres with production not shipped or sold on the CFAP form, and that's item number 34 on the 3114. So here you can see on the screen all three categories. Item 32 having 2,000 pounds, 33 with a 200 pounds of production shipped that was spoiled, and then we also have the 1/8 of an acre that was remained unharvested on the farm. That is what Francis Farmer's apple application would look like for that situation.
A question for you, Janae. Would Francis also be able to count acres of production not sold at the farmer's market because the demand went way down or the market didn't open?
Yes, that would also be ineligible if they were unable to be sold. If they never left the farm because the farmer's market had been shut down, and they once again spoiled just as the others had, then yes, that would be ineligible under acres of production not shipped or sold if they never went to the farmer's market and ended up spoiling on the farm.
Okay, great, thank you. I appreciate those examples. Examples always, different scenarios to me always makes it a little bit more clearer, and hopefully that is helpful to the producers that are with us today. Now, right now, I want to go through some general information, things that you should know just in general. We've covered this on all of the previous webinars. First of all, you are able to self-certify that your application is accurate. We're not requiring that you submit documentation, but it's very important that you keep that documentation just in case there are going to be any type of spot checks or questions asked later. There may be that possibility that USDA requires some evidence be provided if something seems amiss. So do keep your documentation. And please know that there's help available. We don't expect, especially if you've never done business with USDA before, we don't expect you to automatically understand how to complete and submit everything. There is assistance available. We have a call center that has been set up just for this program for CFAP, where you are able to ask questions, request information, and you can even request language interpretation services. So if English is not your first language, or if you're not proficient in English, you can call this call center who will connect you with our language interpretation line, as well as any of our county offices. They all have access to this interpretation line. Our videos are there with closed captioning available in different languages so that you can view the videos or these webinars later on in different languages. And there are organizations out there that are willing to help and assist you. Several USDA agencies have agreements and collaborations with associations and different organizations that are more than willing to assist you, answer questions, and also provide information on the program. A lot of them have websites that have lots of information on the program, and they're willing to help walk you through different scenarios to make sure that this program is a good fit for you. I mentioned that we had a call center. This is a hotline that is available to the public. You can call this number. It's 1-877-508-8364, and you will be connected with a USDA employee. A lot of them are located in county offices. They are service center employees, and they're able to either establish those appointments for you or connect you with your local office or answer just basic questions that you have. We do understand that everyone would like their application processed as quickly as possible so that you can get those payments quickly. So as a result, we're asking that you first, if you have questions, contact the call center, and that allows the county office a little bit more time to get these applications reviewed and processed and out the door quicker. But feel free to give them a call. We do understand that there is a high volume of callers, both to the county office and to the call centers, but we do ask that you be patient and realize this is a nationwide pandemic, and it's affecting a lot of producers and not just ones that have traditionally done business with us. So if you're new to USDA, you may not know that we normally require what's called a farm number to participate in our programs. For this program, you do not need a farm number. Now, there's always a caveat. There may be a situation where the local office follows up with you later for additional information. If there is a conservation compliance requirement, it just depends on your land. It may be that a farm number would be required, but initially to apply, you do not need a farm number. That's something that they'll follow up with you later to comply with those conservation requirements. There are some demographic forms that I don't believe they're available online. They're not posted online, but you're always able to request completion of these forms. They are AD 1026. This form allows you to identify your demographic, your name and address. There are other forms that are available that help you to report your farming structure, to make sure that we are recording that and that we have your adjusted gross income to ensure the payment limitations. And then, of course, there's the direct deposit form that is the most important form to have online and reported. All of these are forms that are available. The required ones are posted on the farmers.gov website. Some of the other forms can be made available to you through the county office. They will tell you exactly what's required and what's needed to apply. So what happens after I sign my application? Please know that you have up to 60 days following submission of your signature to submit a complete application. And what I mean by that is after you submitted it and you submitted the application, if there are any questions that the county office has, they will follow up with you within 60 days, and you have that time period to address any of their concerns. Normally what happens is that they will review the application, they'll notify you, they'll contact you if there's any follow-up information or questions that they have. They'll go ahead and process it and approve it, and you will receive it by direct deposit. All payments are made electronically. And again, they will notify you if there are any issues or concerns about your application. So we're very hopeful that this has been informative. Again, to find out more about the commodities, the new eligible commodities, we ask that you go to farmers.gov/CFAP. But to stay alert and abreast of all of our webinars and additional information, because as Sonia mentioned previously, that there will be future announcements, so more than likely we will have future webinars. To subscribe to alerts on those future announcements and webinars, we ask that you go to FSA.USDA.gov/subscribe. There you're able to enter your information and select Outreach and Education, and that signs you up for all of our announcements and events. My apologies for being so tongue-tied today. I hope that has not caused any inconvenience, but thank you so much for participating in our webinar. And please, we encourage you to call the call center, visit the website, and apply for CFAP today. Thank you.
When you're giving to something, the big question is, will my dollar really make a difference? What will a dollar really do? Have you ever skipped a meal? What about 2 meals? Your stomach makes some crazy noises, especially when it's quiet. You start to get grumpy. You can't pay attention to your homework. Have you ever gone a whole day without eating?
Hi, my name is Darla Larson, and I am the Regional Vice President of Farm Credit Services of Western Arkansas. Our Farm Credit Association covers the 40 counties in Western Arkansas, so a lot of you are our customers, and if you aren't our customers, I hope this information helps you out very much as well, and I appreciate the opportunity to speak during this virtual conference. So let's go ahead and get started. We'll start with interest rates. That's the hot topic. Obviously, rates have dropped. That's what we hear on the radio. Short-term money is extremely cheap right now. So if you're looking at operating or term debt, you're looking anywhere from 3 to 4% with Farm Credit. So now's that time to finance that new baler or tractor that you've been needing to purchase. What about real estate debt? Is it good to refinance? Well, long-term real estate rates are also very attractive. So if you choose an adjustable rate that's only fixed for the first 3 to 5 years of the term, you're looking 3 to 3.5% today. If you decide to go a long-term fixed rate, you're looking anywhere from 4.5 to 5.5%, depending on the term that you choose. Typically, real estate is anywhere from 10 to 25 years. If you're already a Farm Credit customer, you probably already received a call from your Farm Credit office to convert your interest rate to a lower rate and save money. And Farm Credit offers this service to our existing customers, and it's fast, it's cheap, it's an easy alternative to refinancing. It involves no new appraisal, no new title, no closing cost. It's immediate. So this market is obviously giving us an opportunity to capture a lower rate, and we are doing everything we can to convert our existing customers to today's lower rates and save them money. So if you have a loan and you haven't got a call and you want to talk about it, call your local office. But Farm Credit's committed to providing the capital and liquidity to our farmers and ranchers and our rural communities throughout this crisis, because we know the work doesn't just stop because the rest of the world is hitting the pause button. The world needs to eat. We know producers like yourself, you're working hard to manage your operation during these crazy times. So how do you deal with a disruption in income? Whether it's a cutoff of your income from an off-farm job, or is it just the downturn in the cattle market alone that you're hurting? We watch the cattle market too, and we know live cattle seems to be moving in lockstep with the financial market, which obviously is a very fluid situation. Things are changing really rapidly with the COVID pandemic, and there's so much uncertainty. So if you have concerns about servicing your debt based on cattle prices, call your loan officer at Farm Credit. That is your first step. We work really hard to keep the lines of communication open because we know this is a new time, a new era. No one's ever seen this before. There's big losses, there's lots of volatility, and there are options to service your existing debt. So don't feel like you can't pick up the phone and let us know what you're thinking. So you're thinking, well, what do I do besides call you? Well, this is what you can do as a cattle producer in this down market. You've got a few options. So we'll start with just going over the first, which would be a payment extension. So an extension of a payment is a really good fix for a short-term problem. So maybe you need 30 days to put more weight on your cattle, or if prices are short and we need 60 days for maybe a price rebound because there's some good news in the market out there, or even looking at a 90-day extension. So a payment extension is typically a one-time action or event that will help you get through a short-term fix. Another servicing action that we could do is re-amortizing your loan. This is more of a longer term fix. So let's say you have an annual payment coming up and your cash crop only covers 90% of what's due. We can take that 10% shortfall if you cannot pay it and re-amortize it over the remaining life of the loan. So that shortfall then gets broken up, and let's say you pay it over the next 3 annual payments or 4 annual payments. So your annual payment will go up since you're taking that shortfall and distributing it over the remaining years. However, if this action makes your payment exceed what your annual cash crop can service, then we can just look at extending the maturity along with the re-am to make those payments more manageable with your production level. So we're not going to snowball you into a bigger problem next year. So we look at those on a case-by-case basis and see, what your herd looks like, what your, debt load looks like, and how to best service that. And then another option is a refinance, or you hear people call it a rebalance. And this is if you have a big loss and an extension or a re-am doesn't help the situation, that's when we look at doing a refinance. And this is a bit more common with feeder calves or stockers. And this can spread the debt over a longer term, lowering the payments, obviously, to help with the cash flow. This could be a combination of somebody buying high and selling low, and you need to finance the loss, and you need to finance some operating costs that you've incurred during this downtime. So we basically look at that debt, structure it where you can service it accordingly, and help you get through these tough times. So there's some options for you to help you survive. We know it's not easy. So what can you do as a producer when you're getting ready to call your loan officer to get this information together? Only you know your operation. You know it best. You understand it. So it would be best if you had some information put together, and that may include how short are you on your payment, or how short do you think you're going to be? How far behind do you think you'll be? Knowing, the weight you've got on your calves or whatnot. Know where you are today. And the best way to do that is complete a balance sheet so that you know where you stand on your equity position and where are you on your earnings. How much did you make last year? How much have you made year to date? Where do you think you're going to land at year end? Where's break even? And if you've had any other hardships, if someone has lost an off-farm job, or if there's been a furlough with someone in your family that you have a loss of income for a short period of time. And then what's your plan? Where do you see yourself? How do you see yourself kind of making it through the disruption of income? Because your loan officer is going to listen, and they're going to customize a plan to help service your debt to best fit your current operation. So, this is a partnership. So we want the producer to bring all that information to the table, tell us where you want to go. And then as a loan officer, we then work within the parameters that we have as a lending cooperative and help you manage through this crisis. The biggest issue we have with COVID is just the disconnect with the short-term and the long-term markets. You see a big drop, so there's just massive uncertainty with the consumers. They don't know if they're going to have a job tomorrow or if their retirement is tanked 40% or 60%. And then you have the retailer and supplier side, and they're trying to handle the panic buying that this pandemic has caused. So the supply side is trying to process meat, but they're dealing with staffing the slaughter plants and then keeping the employees healthy to maintain a certain level of production to match the demand and comply with the CDC regulations. So, that's an issue in itself. And really, aside from COVID, meat production was actually up in 2020, anywhere from 6 to 8%, depending on cattle, pork, or poultry. So, when we look at the long run, it doesn't take an economist to see it's mostly negative. The short-term panic buying is really going to hurt the long term because the consumers are going to utilize that food in the next 6 months and not necessarily need to buy more. So then you've got this long-term disruption in the restaurant trade too. So the second half of 2020, you're going to see consumers, keep those apron strings tight and save money, which means they will be spending less, especially on beef. So, this problem isn't going away. And I know you all know that, but let's look forward. There's no change in the past. Let's not even hit reset. Let's just hit fast forward and think about what's next. And we're all waiting to see what this new normal is going to be because we know we'll never go back to the old normal as we knew it. So, it's not like a normal disaster event that we've seen in the past, typically a flood or a tornado or a certain event, hurricane. This is an open-ended event and it's driving the markets. Then you have the upcoming presidential election. So between the upcoming presidential election and the vaccine needing to happen before we can put this disaster of 2020 behind us, we're facing a pandemic. It's led to crazy unemployment, and the economic turmoil is on an enormous scale. It's hard to tell how deep this wound is. So every industry is hurting, not just agriculture. So there is just far-reaching, long-lasting changes that are going to come out of this. But we're just going to persevere and we're going to be available. So all I can do is, keep the line of communication open with my customers. And I encourage you to do the same as a producer and go see Farm Credit. We know that we have a long period of sustained low interest rates in front of us. So if you haven't done your refinancing or you want to talk to your loan officer about, maybe you don't have trouble servicing your debt, but maybe you just want to talk about your 3 to 5 year plan, give them a call, go in and meet them, and keep those communication lines open with Farm Credit because Farm Credit's here for you and we want to do whatever we can to help you through these tough times. So I hope that information was helpful, and my email is darla.larson@myaglender.com. And you can always visit our website at myaglender.com for locations and loan officer contact information. And we are happy to help when we can. So thank you again for this opportunity.
I'm more than a lending specialist. I live the rural lifestyle.
I'm more than a loan officer. I'm a beekeeper.
I'm more than a customer specialist. I'm a cattle producer.
I am more than a customer service representative. I'm an outdoors enthusiast.
I'm more than a loan officer. I'm a poultry farmer.
I'm more than a customer specialist. I'm a landowner and a gardener.
I'm more than just a customer specialist. I'm a show mom.
I'm more than a financial service specialist. I'm a gardener.
I'm more than a loan officer. I'm a rural homeowner.
I'm more than just a credit analyst. I raise and compete on quarter horses as well.
I'm more than a credit analyst. I volunteer in my rural community.
We're more than just a lender. We're agriculture.
Hi everyone, I'm Lindsay Holtzclaw and I'm the second Vice President for Arkansas Women in Agriculture. Each year at our conference we have the privilege of awarding a scholarship to a young woman studying and pursuing a career in agriculture. This year we're excited because we're not awarding just one, but two $500 scholarships to two deserving young women in ag. While we can't recognize them in person this year, we wanted to take this time to recognize their achievements and tell you a little bit more about the great things they're accomplishing in agriculture. Our first 2020 Arkansas Women in Agriculture Scholarship recipient is Ashlyn Ussery. Ashlyn is a graduate student at the University of Arkansas in Fayetteville, studying agricultural and extension education with an emphasis in communications. In the spring of 2019, Ashlyn graduated from Southern Arkansas University with a Bachelor of Science in Agricultural Business. In almost 5 years of studying agriculture, Ashlyn says that she has loved every second of it and looks forward to a career serving our industry. Growing up in the predominantly urban area of Pulaski County, Ashlyn was not involved in agriculture until age 14 when she reached out to Faulkner County 4-H and began showing hogs. Today, she credits her passion for ag to the opportunities she received from showing livestock and the professionals in the industry who pushed and encouraged her. Ashlyn said, "Agriculture is not changing every year, but rather every day. It is an industry that is ever evolving with groundbreaking innovations that were unimaginable just 10 years ago. I'm beyond proud to be a part of the community of agriculturalists that make it run day in and day out. Serving Arkansas agriculture in a professional capacity by promoting agricultural products, businesses, and individuals is my passion and want in the coming years as I begin my career." Our second Arkansas Women in Agriculture Scholarship recipient is Jessica Wesson. Jessica's agriculture story began as a child, joining 4-H at the young age of 5. Since then, she has shown dairy goats, broilers, meat pen rabbits, market hogs, commercial gilts, market lambs, commercial ewes, and market goats. Showing livestock was her introduction to agriculture in 4-H, but her involvement didn't stop there. Jessica began competing in various speaking and leadership events through 4-H, and later as a member of the CFAP chapter. Today, Jessica is a senior at the University of Arkansas, majoring in agricultural communications. She is an active member of the Dale Bumpers College of Agricultural, Food, and Life Sciences by serving as a member of the Agricultural Communicators of Tomorrow, Collegiate Farm Bureau, FFA Alumni and Supporters, and Sigma Alpha Professional Agricultural Sorority. Jessica's family raises cattle, and she helps out on her family's operation when possible. She said she plans to begin raising her own herd next fall. Jessica also plans to pursue a graduate degree in agricultural communications at the University of Arkansas this fall and hopes to obtain a career in agricultural communications. Jessica said she believes that all stories in agriculture deserve to be heard. She said, "I want agriculture to be united for the betterment of the entire industry. There's an issue with producers not accepting other types of agriculture. If agriculture is divided internally, then consumers won't know who to trust. My goal is to help producers realize that all kinds of agriculture have a place at the table." Please join me in congratulating these two outstanding women in agriculture.
Hi everyone, I'm Dr. Brittney Schrick, Family Life Specialist for the University of Arkansas System Division of Agriculture Cooperative Extension Service. I'm so happy to be presenting today for the Arkansas Women in Agriculture Conference. The topic I was asked to cover is the unknown farm crisis, chronic stress, and mental health. Back at the beginning of the year when I was first asked to speak at what was then a face-to-face conference, chronic stress for agriculture producers and their families had taken the forefront as an important topic of discussion among service providers, rural communities, and producers, so the topic was a timely choice. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. and we will get started. Since March, of course, we've been in the throes of a global pandemic that has only intensified the stressors you were already facing in agriculture and in families generally. So today, I would like to highlight some general ag stressors, how the current pandemic may affect already stressed families and farms, how to recognize chronic stress and suicide risk in yourself and in others, and some healthy coping strategies you can use to reduce stress, and some resources that you can access. And then at the end, I'll be available for live questions, even though this is a pre-recorded presentation. All right, so I can't hold you to this, obviously, because I can't see you, and you are watching a recorded video of me, but I would like you to try this. So everyone take a second and close your eyes and take a deep breath in and let it out. Visualize your favorite place in the world. Maybe it's inside your home. Maybe it's on your property or where you grew up. Maybe it's the beach or the mountains. Just choose a place that you feel at peace. Try to bring about that feeling of relief or joy or rest or whatever it is that makes you choose that place. While you're in your place, think about why you love it. Does it remind you of a simpler time? Does it offer rest from your daily stressors? Is it an escape from your usual routine? What makes you go there now? Take 2 more good deep breaths. 1 in and out. 1 more. In and out. All right, now open your eyes and keep that place in the back of your mind as we talk today. And we're going to return to it in a little bit. Over the past several years, there has been increased attention on the agriculture community related to mental health challenges and suicide. In 2016, data were released showing the agriculture-related professions had the highest rate of suicide among all professions. Since that time, these data have been somewhat called into question and in some cases completely debunked. However, the fact remains that there is a mental health crisis in agriculture, and the incorrect but alarming data shined a light on a problem that has been largely ignored. Although the data were somewhat overblown, the real numbers and the true experience of those in agriculture professions and rural support services have demanded a call to action for rural communities. Farming and ranching are stressful even at the best of times, and when additional or worsening stressors add burdens, mental health can decline and suicide rates often rise as a result. According to a study released by the National Council on Family Relations, farm families live with change and stress because of the intertwined nature of their business and their family life. Stress comes from the constancy of responsibilities, weariness and loneliness, juggling off and on farm work, illness or injury, tensions between multiple generations, or a combination of ordinary stressors. Recent downturns in the agricultural economy, as well as increasing weather uncertainties related to climate change, are producing extraordinary distress, despair, diminished decision-making ability, opioid use, and suicide. USDA statistics show the average age of a farmer in Arkansas at over 58 years old. As this population ages, new health stressors typical to aging, such as arthritis, vision or hearing loss, heart disease, stroke, and diabetes increase. Chronic stress, poverty, volatile markets, weather, and injury or illness may contribute to depression symptoms among farmers. Furthermore, farmers, ranchers, and farm and ranch workers over the age of 54 have been identified as a high-risk group for work-related injuries and fatalities. At least part of every county in Arkansas is a federally designated medically underserved area, and 80% of the counties are entirely within such areas, meaning that we have limited access to health care in most of our counties in the state. High rates of disability, geographic distance, limited public transportation, and subsequent restricted access serve as barriers to support services for agriculture workers. Other chronic health conditions or injuries may lead to dependence on pain medication or coping with substance use or misuse that can cause or worsen other long-term health and mental health conditions. Even for farm families in a younger cohort, typical farm stressors like weather, financial strain, trade and labor policies, commodity prices, whether or not to maintain outside employment, and maintaining health or avoiding injury all influence the day-to-day stress levels you and your family experience. Of course, one of the main frustrations that can intensify the stress of farming is the unpredictable nature of so many of these factors, and that so many of them are completely out of your control. If you only had to deal with one unpredictable thing, like commodity prices, but the weather was pretty predictable, stress, of course, might be less. So when you start thinking about what pressures you experience as an agricultural worker or someone who's in support for agricultural or rural families, some of the things you might think of are commodity prices and weather, outside obligations or employment, and how those impact whether or not the farm can succeed. So especially right now, for example, when we're also dealing with COVID, some families may have lost an outside income source that was necessary, or it may have been significantly reduced. So that can have greater impact on the entire circle. It could also have greater impact on a community if farms close down. So commodity prices, succession planning, family and relationships, all of these things are going to have different impacts on different families. So as you think about the things that you specifically tend to stress about or that cause you stress in your family, you're not alone. Know that you're not alone. These are not things that are specific to you and your family, though you may experience them differently. Farm and ranch stressors can come from many directions, including having to race to town. So if you live way outside of town and you need something, it's not just a 1 mile down the road situation for many of you. Machinery breaks down or other related difficulties like that. You have to stop in the middle of something. Storms or weather concerns, difficulty with a spouse, children, or parents, long hours, fatigue, getting worn out, maybe meeting with a loan officer and it not going the way that you think you thought it was going to, conflict with family or partners or employees, physical or mental health concerns. And then, of course, this year we have the additional stressors related to the pandemic. So as if farming and ranching wasn't stressful enough, adding in COVID-related stressors like supply chain disruptions, access to supplies that you might need to maintain your farm operation. Even if it was just a blip, maybe it was just a couple of weeks you couldn't get what you needed, that might have thrown off your entire schedule. So we're in a global pandemic. Aspects of this health crisis affect every single part of our work and our lives. We're operating in social distancing, which is changing how we do everything from buy groceries to talk to our friends to conduct tailgate meetings. Social distancing led many of us to crisis homeschooling, potentially telecommuting, or even job loss, medical appointments that are now conducted via telemedicine, and of course, social isolation, which farmers and ranchers often have dealt with in the past. So for some of you, it may have been business as usual in terms of social isolation, but for others, it may have intensified something that was already troubling. We're experiencing anxiety and fear and collective grieving on a scale we've never before experienced. Add to all of this already overwhelming cocktail the fact that we are constantly bombarded with new information in an ever-changing situation. Agriculture stressors, again, like supply chain disruptions, farmers who engage in direct sales, you may have lost sales, you may have gained sales. You may have found people looking more to buy locally when they were concerned about grocery store supply chain disruption. But if you rely primarily on sales to restaurants or institutions, you may have found a loss in your sales. You may have had an inability to pay your employees or not been able to find visiting workers in a seamless way like maybe has happened in the past. You have possibly lost income that has led to other financial issues, experiencing market fluctuation, and then just concerns about your family well-being. So all of these issues may come together to create a whirlwind of stress that could affect anyone. It's very important to pay attention to those stressors and how they are affecting you and those around you. Some stresses related to farming are expected and just assumed to be part of the job. However, the effects of those stressors cannot be ignored. So take just a minute to think about what you're finding the most stressful right now. It's okay if it has nothing whatsoever to do with a farming operation that you support. And maybe you're trying to make decisions about school. That's something that I was stressed out about quite recently. You're trying to make decisions about school for your family. Maybe you're getting married or you're getting divorced, or it could really be anything. So just think about what you are most stressed about right now. You may even want to write it down and refer back to it as we go through the rest of this presentation. Pay attention to how you feel in your body when you think about these stressors. Do you get very tense? Do you get a headache? Do you feel chest pain or anything like that? And then also think about what you normally do when you think about this stressor or you actively deal with it. So what is it that you turn to? And we're going to be talking about coping strategies here in just a second. So I'm going to give y'all just a second to think about that. As you think about your stress, you may find yourself dismissing your experience or situation by thinking, well, I'm so much better off than a lot of other people. While that sort of empathy is very important and a wonderful quality in life, remember this: don't compare. Don't compare your situation to the situations of others. You may be in a relatively good spot, but that doesn't mean that you can't or shouldn't feel stress or grieve for times past or long for a future where things are easier. You may be in a relatively awful situation, but that doesn't mean you can't find ways of managing your stressors, or that you shouldn't pause to feel what you feel or to count your blessings that you do have. It's important to show empathy for those whose situations may be worse than yours, and it's natural to feel a little resentment for those you see who seem to have it better. But when experiencing stress, it's important to acknowledge and name it. Right now, we're all grieving a sense of normalcy that we've lost. Events canceled, our security compromised. There's no correct way to grieve or to experience stress, and we're all learning together how to manage a largely unmanageable situation. Some people have personality characteristics that help them get through stressful situations in a fairly healthy way. For example, in the pandemic specifically, there's some evidence that people who are prone to anxiety are faring a little bit better than you might expect, because they're actually psychologically prepared for such a bizarre worst-case scenario. Not everyone, of course, is reacting this way. Stress can show up very differently for different people. As we look through these stressors, pay attention to things you recognize in yourself and write them down, especially if they relate specifically to something that you wrote down as something you're finding stressful right now. Think about how you experience those things, either in your body and your emotions, and then we'll also talk about some behavioral and relational signs of stress. If your spouse or parent or coworker or child or whomever you deal with shows some of these signs when stressed, you may want to make a note of those too. So some physical signs of stress are going to be headaches, back and neck tension. You might call it a tension headache, especially if it runs up your back or up your neck. Upset stomach or distressed, GI issues. You might feel short of breathing. You might have labored breathing. You might be a low energy where you just kind of can't make yourself do anything. You might feel body fatigue or tiredness, aggravated health issues. Now, especially when we're dealing with such a physically demanding job like farming, a lot of these things are going to seem normal because you experience them as a result of your physical labor. It's important to pay attention to whether some of these things, like body fatigue, are never alleviated with rest. So if you still don't feel better, even after you've had some rest, that might be a sign of stress and not a sign of actual fatigue related to working. Emotional signs of stress are going to be things like irritability about little things. That's one of my main ones that I do. A sense of frustration or anger, impatience and restlessness, feeling discouraged. You might feel hopeless. You might withdraw from others or engage in social isolation on purpose. You might feel very anxious or panicky, and you might have difficulty concentrating or making decisions. It's likely that you will notice these signs in yourself or someone you love far before they or you will say, I feel stress. So paying attention to the ways that you and your loved ones handle and show stress can make dealing with it easier. Some behavioral signs that you might see are difficulties with sleep, an inability to relax or to concentrate, getting angry easily over things that maybe don't make sense to be angry about, trouble making decisions, increased use of alcohol or other drugs, difficulty being flexible, overeating or loss of appetite. And then in your relationships, you may notice some communication difficulties, conflicts with family members, a lack of satisfaction in your relationships. You might find yourself feeling like nothing is fun, or like, why can't I just hang out with this person? And it might even be with children. It could be with a loved one aside from your partner. Verbal or physical outbursts that can sometimes be abusive, strained interactions with others, avoiding others, and a lack of time with spouse, children, or others. So while a lot of those are fairly typical, though definitely unpleasant responses to stress, some warning signs of emotional distress beyond the typical should not be ignored and may be a sign of more serious issues like depression. So some of the ones that we just mentioned, especially if they're things that are interfering with a person's ability to thrive. So eating or sleeping too much or too little, pulling away from people, having low or no energy, having unexplained aches or pains, feeling helpless or hopeless, excessive substance use or substance misuse. So I'd already mentioned opioids and other pain medications. So maybe somebody started out with an injury that was actually being legitimately treated by the pain medication. It's very common for people to continue to use them even when they don't really need them anymore for the pain, or to use them off-label. So they use them, they notice that they feel a little checked out when they're on them, so they use them for that. Worrying a lot of the time or feeling guilty without knowing why, and then thinking of hurting yourself or of suicide. And we will talk several more times about responses to suicide. And I'll give you a number to call here at the end. Stress responses in children don't always look like those of adults. And children's worlds are fairly upside down right now. If you're caring for children, it's important to be aware that sometimes children's and teens' stress responses just look like bad behavior or sullen teenagerness. Especially for teens, a lot of stress response behavior looks like what we think of teen risk-taking behavior, like experimenting with substance use, withdrawal from family, and resisting authority. If your child has experienced previous trauma or survived another disaster or intense stressor like a death, natural disaster, or they have previous mental health concerns, pay especially close attention to any changes that you see. Especially since school-age children are used to and thrive on routines, it's important to have realistic expectations of what they will be like and what they will be capable of doing while they're experiencing such bizarre times. You are likely in the process of making, or have just made, a decision on whether to send your child to school in person or to do virtual or homeschool. Depending on your decision and your child's personality, they may have very strong feelings about what they want to do. Or they may not care at all. They may disagree with your decision, and they may tell you about it. Giving your kids some grace, offering them some opportunities to process their feelings, and making sure that they are secure and safe is very important. If they are upset about upcoming school plans, let them be, at least assuming that they are safe and not endangering anyone else. It is a weird time, and kids and teens may not show their stress like you do. So withdrawing from friends and family, often we think that teens just do that, and they do. But if they're doing it to the point where they are completely unwilling to interact with anyone, that could be problematic. And it could be a sign of depression or other mental health issues. Maybe they're competing for more attention. So you might have, especially a young child, often shows stress this way. They want attention and they will do whatever they can to get it. Being unwilling to leave home, or in this case, maybe they won't leave their room. They might be less interested in things that they're normally interested in. They might be aggressive They might increase conflict with those around them, which might be their siblings or you as their parent. They might have difficulty concentrating, and they might be having physical symptoms such as a headache or a stomach ache. One of my daughters was having an issue with stomach aches for several days, and then she dealt with a stressful issue she was holding to herself, and all of a sudden her stomach didn't hurt anymore. So if you notice troubling stress signs in your child, like threats of self-harm, even if they are obviously not something they could act on, it's not typical for a child to threaten to harm themselves. So regardless of what it is, if they threaten self-harm or suicide, physically threaten or harm others, if they're engaging in substance use or misuse, sleeping all the time or not at all, or they have intense physical symptoms, call your child's doctor. Threats of suicide should be taken seriously. Do not leave your child alone. Continue to listen to them. Tell them that their thoughts of self-harm and suicide do not have to be acted upon, and that hope is present and recovery is possible. A child threatening suicide should be taken to the ER, and I'll give additional resources for who you can call or contact at the end of the presentation. All of these behavioral, emotional, physical, and relational responses can lead to the use of damaging or negative coping strategies in children and adults. Negative coping behaviors like substance misuse or dependence, ignoring health concerns. So maybe you know you have had some issues with chest pain, or you've had some issues that are you hurt your back, or you're having other health concerns, but you're ignoring them because it's just too hard to manage. Binge eating or heavily restricting food intake, gossiping or other negative types of social interaction, overspending or shopping for things that you don't need to make yourself feel better, avoiding the stressor or withdrawing from the situation completely when that's not an appropriate course of action, obsessing about the issue but not doing anything constructive to make it better. All of these might actually end up causing more stress themselves. They can worsen existing health problems or cause new ones, and they can cause new stressors like financial burdens. So if you catch yourself moving toward a negative coping strategy, stop. Take a deep breath like we've already practiced, and see if you can move toward a more positive behavior instead. Things like gardening, calling a friend, watching a movie, practicing mindfulness and meditation like we did earlier with kind of visiting our happy place. Try to get a good night's sleep. Improving your diet. That's something that we could probably all stand to eat a few more fruits and vegetables. Start a journal. And that doesn't have to be, a childhood dear diary that's every day, but maybe it can offer you an outlet to process some of your feelings. Start a new hobby. Maybe you've always wanted to learn how to knit, or you've always been interested in hand lettering things. Pick something that can offer some mindfulness practice that offers you a chance to concentrate on something. Those are always good choices. In addition to strategies you can use in the moment, like we just talked about, take stock of your existing resources and how those might be useful in managing your stressors. Who do you know? What do you have? Where can you go? Ask yourself a lot of these questions and think about who you typically go to and maybe whether that's not the most helpful person to go to. If you tend to think, well, we live too far out to find anybody to talk to, there are so many options now of ways to interact virtually that even some of the limitations that exist within communities can sometimes be overcome by virtual options. Reach out for the support of friends and family. Look for opportunities to plan for future stressors. So if something comes up periodically and you kind of know that it's coming, try to plan for it if you can. That doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to be able to put a whole bunch of money back to plan for the next time that something breaks down. But you might be able to notice that every time something happens and you respond in a certain way, you might be able to plan for that next time and to plan for a healthier response. Focus on healthy communication within your family, through your coworkers, your employees, whoever it is that you interact with. Try to focus on healthy communication. Passive-aggressive or aggressive communication often adds stress rather than improving it. Increase those positive coping strategies, as we just discussed, and reduce negative ones. If some of your negative coping strategies require medical or psychological intervention, such as addiction treatment or therapy, seek help from professionals. Many insurance plans will cover teletherapy appointments, especially right now during the COVID pandemic. So where you might have had to find somebody and go to an office, you can actually do therapy over the phone now, and sometimes a video chat if you prefer. And that way, sometimes you wouldn't even have to leave the farm. In addition to self-management and professional services, the University of Arkansas Cooperative Extension Service offers several options for mental health support and stress management education. The Managing Farm Stress and Pursuing Wellness course is a 1-hour course intended to be delivered face-to-face by your local county extension agent. Additional brief lessons related to stress and depression, suicide and depression, and cultivating a productive mindset are also available. Several of our agents statewide have delivered the course virtually through county Facebook pages and other media. So pay attention to those in your county, and you might actually have your county extension agent doing these programs already. If you would like to request this course, you can contact your county extension office, and we plan to deliver this course via Facebook Live on our UAEX Farm Stress Facebook page later this summer, so be watching for those events. In addition to courses related directly to managing stress, we have offered training in mental health first aid to several, we did several of these sessions last year. The purpose of this day-long course is to prepare participants to respond to mental health crises in much the way that first aid courses teach you to respond to a physical health crisis. Last year, we trained 75 extension personnel across the state in this course. Prior to COVID, we had begun to plan additional courses, and we have trained a trainer within the extension system. Mental health first aid has begun to do some online training, and as soon as our in-house trainer is trained in that training, we will likely offer some more, schedule some more trainings. We hope to offer these in the community so that we can branch outside of the extension system. So our focus primarily is going to be on rural health professionals and others who work with rural populations. And then we also have information for youth farm stress. So go to our UAEX Farm Stress Facebook page, and you should be able to find all of this information. Other resources that we've used and that we have vetted for use in Arkansas include an online rural resilience training created at Michigan State and sponsored by Farm Bureau, Farm Credit, and the National Farmers Union. All of these organizations also have good resources related to farm-related stress and financial concern. The University of Minnesota Extension, along with several sponsor organizations, including American Agri-Women, has a series on cultivating resiliency for women in agriculture. That includes periodic webinars and coffee chats. So the one that I've got on the screen is the one that they've scheduled that's the farthest out at the moment, but it will still be, it will still have passed by the time you watch this. So be sure and watch for these presentations. And we're hoping actually to begin a series like this in Arkansas in the next year or so. The Cultivating Resiliency series tends to be understandably focused on Midwest farming. It's very dairy heavy, and there are a lot of things that they discuss that tend to be focused, again, on their region, which makes sense. The AgriSafe network focuses primarily on rural health and safety issues such as accident prevention, but they also have resources focused on mental health and some specific resources for women's health. So be sure and visit their website. It's agrisafe.org. All right, so if you or someone you know is considering suicide, please call the Suicide Lifeline. It's 1-800-273-8255. We actually have distributed some pocket cards through the Extension Service. So if there is, you could go to your county office probably, and they most likely still have them. Otherwise, it's a good idea to go ahead and program that number into your phone. Even if you don't need it, you might end up interacting with someone who needs it, and it's great to have it available at the time that you need it. There's also a crisis text line that isn't specific to suicide risk, but is available for people who are in any type of mental health crisis. You would just text HOME, HOME, to 741-741 to be connected to a crisis counselor. And then the Arkansas Coalition Against Domestic Violence is 1-800-269-4688. Stressful situations can often lead to outbursts of anger and physical violence within families. And so if you are in a situation like that, or you know someone who is, calling the Arkansas Coalition Against Domestic Violence can be helpful. Crimes Against Children hotline, similar situation there, 1-800-482-5694. And then for suicide risk, or also for any injuries, period, but also injuries related to domestic violence, call your doctor or your local ER. And if you are physically unsafe or victimized, you should call the local police department or 911. All right. Now go back to the beginning of our presentation and think about where you went when you closed your eyes. And we're going to close our eyes and go back there. Now that we're all stressed, thinking of all of our stressors, let's take another minute and take a deep breath in and out. Visualize your favorite place in the world. Try to bring out about a feeling of relief or joy or rest. Think about all of the tools you have available to cope with your stressors and to help those around you. Breathe in and out. Concentrate only on your breath and on the sound of my voice. Your work is important. You are strong and capable. The world needs you and your gifts. Take 2 more good deep breaths. 1 in and out. Last time, in and out. Now open your eyes. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you have enjoyed this presentation. I put my contact information up here as well for you if you would like to get in touch with me. My email address is there. It's bschrick@uaex.edu. And then I also have our 2 Facebook pages. The UAEX Family Life page is just sort of general marriage, parenting, family life sorts of information, which is what my subject matter area is. And then our UAEX Farm Stress page on Facebook includes ag-related content. And I will be available for live questions now, and thank you so much.
everyone. It's Yvette again.
And it's Danette. We'd like to thank our sponsors again, because without them, we wouldn't be able to have such an awesome conference and a virtual conference. Those sponsors are Farm Credit, Simmons Bank, Greenway, Arkansas Cattlemen's Association, Arkansas Beef Council, Arkansas Farm Bureau, Cowboys for Tyler, Merchants and Planners Bank, and Swing Away J Ministries. Thank you very much.
Yes, and we want to thank you all too for being here with us today. We really appreciate you spending your time with us, and we hope that you gained a lot from today's conference. If you have any questions, please feel free to give us an email. Send us an email at conference@arwomenenag.org. Again, that's conference@arwomenenag.org. You can also go to our website anytime to stay up on things going on with Women in Ag and follow our Facebook page. Our website address is www.arwomenenag.org. Okay? Well, I guess we'll see you all next year. We hope that everyone's able to join us at the 2021 conference on March 16th and 17th. So mark your calendars and plan to be there.
Absolutely. All right. Thank you, everybody, for joining us.
Thank you. Bye.
Have a great day.